my Redeemer, my Creator, Emperor Kedamawi, Haile Selassie, Nagusa Nagast. Why have you forsaken I? Why are you so far from helping I, and from the words of my roaring? Oh my Jah, I cry in the daytime, but you hear not, and in the night season, and am not silent. But you are holy, O you that inhabits the praises of Israel. Our fathers trusted in you, they trusted, and you did deliver them. They cried unto you and were delivered. They trusted in you and were not confounded. But I am a worm and no man, a reproach of men and despised of the people. All they that see I laugh I to a scorn. They shoot I the lip. They shake their head, saying, He trusted on the Lord, that he would deliver him, for there is none to help. Greetings, giving thanks for our supports, headline of the time. Rastafari. See, that's Satan's scheme, you know. Satan the observer, he's always watching. He's always looking for a flaw. He's always looking for someone to fall, you know. He always wants to find a reason to disbelieve. He always wants to find a reason to doubt. So I got this magazine, The Atlantic. They got an article on the gangs in the prison. They went to Pelican Bay, interviewed some prisoners. Of course, Pelican Bay, you know, that's where the disciplinary, the worst of the worst. Typically gang, high-profile gang members supposedly are housed there. The unit, the prison itself is structured so that it reduces the amount of really interactions that opposing rival gang members can have. I just wanted to point out a couple of things about this. I mean, first of all, you know, it talks about how many cell phones they got in these prisons, and that these guys whittle their bars of soap away so that they can keep the bar of soap up there, you know what, while they're talking on the phone, so they can keep their, you know what, stretched out or whatever in that position, you know. So it's kind of disgusting, but you know, it's interesting because there's no way you could put this by me that they're in Pelican Bay. This is super maximum security for a state prison, and yet somehow, some way that they're able to get cell phones in. I mean, you can't get that by me without, you know, having to be skeptical about that. You know, it appears that these gangs operate with the awareness of the intelligence community, of the law enforcement community, and what they want these gang members to do is to use the cell phone. In essence, they encourage it so that they can monitor their activity a lot closer. And whether these guys are aware, I doubt it. I mean, they're in there doing whatever 20, 30 years. I don't think they're really on to the latest news, the latest technology, which we're not even aware of. Even though Edward Snowden disclosed what he disclosed, remember, he only disclosed a tiny, very, very small fraction of what he had. I mean, he might have released a couple hundred documents. Well, there is millions of documents. So there's a lot we don't know about. Of course, the 28 pages from the 9/11 Commission report, which wasn't disclosed to the American people, still hasn't been disclosed. We keep talking about abortion, immigration. I mean, it's the same game because they want to keep us distracted. First of all, this is how I operate. This is how I would manage a business. Let's get all the small stuff that we can out of the way and make the people feel comfortable, build that trust back. In other words, disclose those 28 pages. Talk about 9/11. You know, because would you rather talk about it now seriously, or would you rather talk about it over the next 1,000 years? Of course, 1,000 years, I mean, that's stretching it. The rate we're going right now, there's no way mankind will exist in 1,000 years. But the point is that there's information that's out there that's beneficial for the people, and yet they want to try to point to all these threats around the world about, this group ISIS is going to invade us through the south, Al Qaeda is going to send us a nuclear weapon, whatever. But they don't just tell us the information that we need to know, which tells us that the government itself, is the real threat. Now you say, well, how's the government threat? We elected them, this and that. Because when they're sworn into the government, they're sworn to secrecy. They have secret laws. That's the key. The key for them is to have secret laws that tell them that they can't tell people what these things are. And if they do, it's a violation of law. And again, you say, well, that doesn't make sense. How could you go against, your morale, your principles, the spirit, the truth? How can you go against the light just to protect the law? Well, that's when you know who they actually worship. So, this gangs in here, you can't convince me that these gangs aren't operating with the support of the so-called law enforcement community, because they know that these guys are career criminals, they're career crooks, and they either have a choice. Either they put them in prison and have them work for the system divertly, or they have them on the outside, and who knows, they might help the system and they might not. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's a lot of drugs, there's rampant drug use in these prisons. And you wonder, how do these people get this money? Well, that's a good question. They work. It's prison labor. Now, Pelican Bay might not work, but one way or another, they're working. Whether they're being used to extract information about, biometric information, or, whether they may be directly being used as, narcos, as rats. So, you never know what's going on, but, as long as there's an incentive for these guys, they'll sell themselves out to anyone. They have no loyalty. So, the fact that they have cell phones, the fact that, there's gangs operating, tells me the same thing. It's the capital-controlled shitstem, where you divide people. You can't lock all the people up, all the prisoners, and just let them just go loose, because what's going to happen is they'll collaborate and they'll come up against you, and they'll overthrow the shitstem. What you have to do is divide them in these segments, in these gangs, so that they think their enemy is someone who thinks their enemy is someone who's not. But their real enemy is those at the top of the tower that seek to oppress those at the bottom for their own gain and their own interest, and to stay in power, because they're afraid to lose that power. It's out of fear that this continues to go on.